¿Qué tal? Buenos días a todos.
Me das miedo, ¿eh? Tienes todo el escrito,
sí.
páginas.
Es un poco intenso, sí. No sé si dará tiempo a todo. Soy Nicolás Menéndez Arries, periodista de Expansión. Para mí es un placer poder entrevistar a Onur Genç, consejero delegado de BBVA, precisamente en un momento como este, ¿no? Que estamos a solo 4 días de la OPA.
3,5.
3,5. Ya. ¿Cuántas horas?
Sí.
¿Cuántos minutos?
No sé, pero sí, algunas.
Muy bien. Nada, pues si te parece empezamos. Él va a hacer las respuestas en inglés, yo las preguntas las voy a hacer en español. Es un formato mixto, pero creo que va a estar muy interesante.
Podemos establecer un acuerdo, ¿eh? Si no me preguntas sobre la OPA, podemos hacer todo en español, incluso yo.
Lo que quiera el público. Si prefieren en español, que levanten la mano. Bueno, empezamos, ¿vale? Acabamos de saber que ha habido una solicitud por parte de Sabadell ante la CNMV para evitar que se manipule el mercado en la OPA. ¿Qué le parece esa solicitud?
I really haven't seen the solicitud or the documento en total. My team was telling me on the way here that they basically asked for investors who publicly say that they want to tender their shares. They want more transparency about this, like whether they have any conflict of interest or so on. If that is the essence of this, transparency is always good. So nothing new on that one. Transparency is always good. If they're asking for more transparency, we support it, obviously.
De acuerdo. Hablemos ahora sobre el periodo de aceptación, ¿no? Ya quedan muy pocos días. ¿Cómo está yendo ese periodo? Acabamos de saber que Zurich ha confirmado, ¿no?, que no va a acudir a la OPA. No sé, si nos puedes contar un poco el balance también de cómo están yendo los encuentros con los inversores.
Very good. First of all, the information in these type of OPAs, it only arrives at the last minute, at the last day. Actually, we have looked into all the latest tender offers that are happening in Italy and also all the tender offers that has happened in Spain. When you look into them, 75% of the acceptances come in the last 3 days. So we have 3.5 days, but 3 days in general is 75%. So we don't have the precise information at the moment. And you might also know this, in these processes, the investors, they basically decide towards the end of the period, as I just mentioned. But also, in the case of Spain, you don't have transparency on the information because the information is kept at the custodians. What does this mean? The investors, they decide in the last few days, they basically say this to their custodian. Then there is a custodian, there is a sub-custodian, custodian, master custodian, grand master custodian. This whole cadena, this whole chain, only gives this information after the period closes, after Friday. Because the legal requirement in Spain is that for the custodians, they have to deliver the information after the period is over, so after Friday. So nobody has the information because of this custodian chain that we are looking into account. But despite this, we are very happy, we are very satisfied with what we have been seeing lately. And there is a positive dynamic, in our view, building up in this process. And allow me to talk to you a little bit about why we think it is positive, this dynamic building up, and why we are happy with what we are seeing. There are different types of investors in this process, and we have been interacting with all of them. But I'll give you the 4 types of investors. The first one, we call them active institutional investors. They are around 30% of the total Sabadell shareholding base, 30. But this percentage of 30 is also increasing. Why? Because this group also includes what we call arbitrage or event-driven funds. So 30 is increasing. But let's go with the 30%, which has been the number of a few weeks ago. This 30%, they are active institutional. They look into the fundamentals of the transaction and they say, is this a good transaction or not? We have had dialogue, discussions with every single one of them, all of them. And every single one of them has told us that they will tender. So all, if not all, practically all, will be tendering. And why is that the case? because they decide based on fundamentals. And what they tell us is that there's one number that we put on the table, which is 41% increase in earnings per share, 41% increase. If you tender versus not tender, 41%. So you are making for your share 100 euros of profits. Tomorrow, if you tender, you would be making 141. This 41% EPS upgrade is confirmed and verified by independent analysts. As a result, all these investors who basically lives for this, they're professional money managers. They live on this topic. They say this is a great deal and they're going to tender.
Claro, es que Sabadell ahí dice que solo va a ir la mitad, pero vosotros contáis con todas. Sí, de institutional.
Active institutional. Again, we have had dialogue with every single one of them. Every single one of them. And some of them actually have come out, even publicly, as you might have seen. So all of them sees the rationale in this, and they're going to tender 30%. The second group, passive, we are estimating them to be 20% of the overall shareholder base. 20%. These groups, they don't buy Sabadell because it's Sabadell, not based on fundamentals, but they buy an index, typically. So Sabadell is part of IBEX 35. These investors, they want to buy IBEX 35, and if Sabadell is part of IBEX 35, they indirectly also buy Sabadell. This group, they go with what they expect the acceptance ratio would be. If they accept the acceptance ratio to be 60, they go with 60%. And they do have a positive bias. This is very important. These passive investors, what they are telling us is that if, in the context of, they have a positive bias on their expectation of the acceptance ratio, because if they are short, they would have to sell to the market, which they don't like. So they have a positive bias to have a positive view on this acceptance ratio, but whatever they expect, they go with that, okay? And many of them told us that they're going to go with 50%. Many of them, 50% plus. If they expect 60%, 60% plus. Why plus? Because of that positive bias that I talked to you, okay? That's the passive shareholders. Then retail shareholders, individual investors in Spain, we will see what's going to happen in the next few days. It's very important. As I mentioned, most of the tenders come in the last few days. But there's one very important thing that we have achieved for this group. In the old days, in all the OPAs of Spain, if your custodian is Sabadell, if your shares are deposited at Sabadell, you had to go to a Sabadell branch. We changed that. Now, even if your shares might be deposited at Sabadell, you can tender your shares by going to a BBVA branch at zero cost. And we are seeing, especially after David Martinez, one of the individual shareholders of Sabadell and the board member of Sabadell, after his decision, we are seeing a clear acceleration in this acceptance of that group, because they are doing it through BBVA now. So we don't know, we have to see the next few days, but there is that positive dynamic building up, even in that group. And then the fourth group is what we call singular investors, David Martinez, which has been a board member of Sabadell for 13 years, and which has come out and publicly said he would tender. And then there is Zurich Insurance, who is an insurance partner for Sabadell. Obviously, they want to protect their business. And as you just mentioned, I think this morning, I haven't seen the statement, but they said they would not tender because they are a strategic partner, partner of Sabadell in this whole transaction. When you sum up all this, it gets you to more than 50% in our view. That's why we are quite confident that we will pass 50% in a very comfortable way.
Está claro que las cuentas os salen, ¿no? Pero es verdad que hay mucha discrepancia de base, ¿no? Con los cálculos que hace Sabadell, ¿no? Que ellos, por ejemplo, están hablando de que hay un goteo de minoristas, no que se esté acelerando. ¿Eso lo habéis detectado hace poco?
Well, the only information, as I mentioned, the only information that we have is the group that we are the custodian. So we are also a custodian in Spain. That group is a relatively small group. It's around 2%. 2% of total Sabadell. They have their shares being custodied in BBVA. And for that, we don't need to wait for the final date because we have the information every day. We have a daily information on this. We are expecting to close today with around 40% acceptance in that group. It's a small group. It might not be fully representative, but we have 40%. Goteo, pero está acumulando.
Vale.
Está acumulando.
Claro. quedando ya tampoco como queda de periodo de aceptación, ¿tú dirías que está yendo mejor de lo esperado, peor de lo esperado? No sé si nos podríais avanzar algún dato.
In terms of the acceptance ratio?
Sí.
See, again, as I mentioned, very quickly, based on what I just explained, different investor groups, what we are hearing from them, what is their driving factor, when you look into all of this, we are very comfortable that we will pass the 50%, very comfortable. For the things that I just talked to you about, for the EPS, 41% increase in EPS, but more importantly, many of them are telling us that since we have started this process 17 months ago, the share price of Sabadell has more than doubled. More than doubled. And the market value of Sabadell 5 years ago was less than 2 billion. Now we are offering them 17 billion. 17 billion is the highest ever in the history of Sabadell. It's the highest ever market cap. What the active, especially institutional shareholders, are telling us that they want to monetize. They want to basically sell at the point which is the peak. There's no more upside in Sabadell's share price. They want to monetize where we are. And one final thing on this topic. I give you numbers, 41%. Yesterday, many other numbers. Everyone is floating different numbers on this whole thing. ¿No?
Too many numbers, yeah.
Too many numbers. Mi sugerencia a todo es olvida todos los números. Because en el fondo, it's a very basic transaction. Americans call this a bread and butter, straightforward transaction. In the M&A world, it's in-market consolidation. What does this mean? BBVA has a mobile app. We spend hundreds of million euros to this app. Okay? Sabadell has an app. They also spend hundreds of millions of euros to improve, to maintain, to upgrade this app. If we do this transaction, rather than 2 apps, we will have 1. As simple as that. Forget every other number that you can imagine. Rather than spending twice, we spend once. We estimate this to be 900 million euros pre-tax, this number, the savings that would be coming from these type of synergies, rather than doing twice, only once. 900 million. Is 900 million a large number? Sabadell makes 1.6 billion. It's a huge number. That is why all those institutional investors, David Martinez, who is also a money manager, he's a professional money manager, the ones who do the calculations based on this very simple fact, they want to go. That's why they're tendering. But there's one important thing. If you don't tender, you're out. It's an individual decision. It's not others deciding for you. You have to decide yourself. But as you decide, you have to ask yourself, if everyone who does this as a living, all the professional money managers, David Martinez, if they are tendering, why are they tendering? If they do the calculations professionally, shouldn't you also ponder about why they are doing so? And I do think this is going to come out very clearly.
Entendido. Volvamos a los números.
Olvídalo. He visto tantas cifras en el último año que es like, ¿qué locura es esto?
Sí. No, ya
es muy básico, es esto.
Sí, eso la verdad que sí.
Es sinergias.
Estos días estamos conociendo las estimaciones de probabilidad, ¿no?, de que esta OPA salga adelante o no, y están haciendo cálculos pues, bancos de inversión y otros analistas. ¿Cuáles son vuestros cálculos? Y conectándolo con eso, ¿no? La prima, que durante tanto tiempo fue negativa, vosotros la volvisteis después de subir un 10% el precio, colocasteis la prima en positivo otra vez. ¿Es suficiente indicador, ¿no?, para esto? Porque ahora se está estrechando.
The prima positivo es una buena señal. Typically, like a week before, some days before, if it's a positive premium, it implies that it's going to go. It's going to be successful. That's what we have. But in the next few days, you might see that this prima is reducing. So it's not by itself the most important criteria. But if it's positive, it signals that it's going to be successful. But beyond that, I don't want to go too much into the details, but I just gave you the numbers. When you multiply them, we are going to be clearly above 50%.
De acuerdo. Uno de los temas que se ha reservado el banco es la posibilidad, ¿no?, de bajar hasta el 30% la aceptación.
Sí.
¿Es algo que se va a reservar hasta el final la posibilidad del banco?
Once again, I just gave you, I don't know, 20 minutes of why we are going to be above 50%. If we are going to be above 50%, this is not going to be the scenario at all. So if it's above 50%, there is no discussion on this. There is not going to be a segundo OPA. And our expectation is that we are going to pass the 50%. In that scenario, hypothetical scenario of 30-50, we have the legal right. As in any other OPA in Spain, you do have the legal right to waive that condition. But, as we said also in the folleto, we don't have the intention of doing so, because we wouldn't need it in any case, is our perspective.
Claro, pero habéis, sobre todo ya después de la mejora del 10%, habéis aclarado pues, que no vais a mejorar más la oferta, que no se va a ampliar el plazo. Habéis sido como muy claros en algunos aspectos. En este se ha preferido no serlo, ¿no? ¿Por qué?
Porque it's a legal right. It's a legal right. Again, we do think we're going to be clearly above 50%. But in that scenario, you want to go after that scenario. Let's go after that scenario. In that scenario, we do think that it's a very highly unlikely scenario. Highly unlikely scenario. But even if it's a highly unlikely scenario, it's a legal right, and we want to maintain our position. Why it's a highly unlikely scenario? Because if you are above 50, which is again our expectation, it's out. If you have not tendered your share, this scenario doesn't exist. And if it is only between 30-50, only in that scenario this might kick in. And even in that scenario, BBVA has to decide. We have the full discretion of going forward or not in that scenario. So it's a very unlikely scenario. Very unlikely scenario, but it's a legal right, and we want to maintain our legal right.
Bueno, sigamos profundizando sobre este
escenario
tan poco probable. ¿Cuál sería el precio en caso de que hubiera una segunda OPA, ¿no? Porque Sabadell recomienda a sus accionistas esperar porque la segunda OPA va a ser más generosa. ¿Qué dice BBVA esto?
Sí. So, it has been 17 months. 17 meses, Nicolás. 17 meses. We had a rule from the first day that we would never be confrontational with Sabadell. Never be. They can say many things, we'll stay on our side. Never confront. But por la primera vez, I'm going to be confrontational. I'm going to be confrontational hoy. Porque lo que está pasando en el mercado, en mi opinión, no es aceptable. Y lo que dice Sabadell en este tema no es correcto. No es correcto lo que dicen. Es muy importante este tema. Hay un documento que gobierna esta transacción. Se llama folleto, el folleto. The prospectus is the legal document that governs this whole process. Okay? And if you go to the prospectus, página 53, page 53, if you look into page 53, it says that the price of a possible segundo OPA, by the way, we are discussing about a very unlikely scenario, as I told you. But let's go with that unlikely scenario, as you were asking. The price would be determined by, written on page 53, artículo 9.2e de Takeover Law, del Real Decreto de las OPAs. Okay? 9.2e. Muy importante. ¿Qué dice 9.2e? Dice que the price of this possible, again, I underline, underscore, destaco otra vez, this possible and highly uncertain in my view. 9.12 dice, you will look into all the shares that BBVA purchased of Sabadell in the last 12 months and you take the maximum. This is what the law says, okay?
12 months.
12 months. BBVA did not buy any shares of Sabadell in the last 12 months. Zero. The only share that we would be buying is this existing OPA. Esta OPA. So the price of the secondary OPA would be the same price of this OPA. It would not be any different. That's what the folleto, that's what the artículo clearly says. So this notion that there will be a segunda OPA. And the segunda OPA will be at a price that is it's not correct. It's misleading. The segunda OPA puede pasar solo al mismo precio. Si hubiera una segunda OPA, sería al mismo precio. If it's the same price, as a shareholder, why would you wait for something that might not happen? Then wait for another 3-4 months to get the same price, and also, by the way, pay for sure the taxes. There is zero benefit in waiting. You should ask why others are encouraging people to wait if it is the same price. If it is the same price, and I encourage everyone who has doubts on this to go to page 53 of the folleto to see that it's the same price. There is no benefit in price, in timing, in taxation to wait for the second OPA. We encourage everyone really to look into the details. And the confusion that is being created around this, and otra vez, lo que dicen no es correcto. Y la primera vez estoy rompiendo esta regla de no confrontación. Lo que está pasando no es aceptable.
Ha quedado bastante claro. Aceptable, sí. Se nos está acabando el tiempo. Bueno, se ha acabado ya, pero no me resisto a hacer una más. Ahora que estamos tan cerca del final, ¿qué harías distinto si pudieras volver atrás? ¿Qué harías distinto con respecto a la OPA?
Sí. I mean, it's always easier to look into things after the fact, saying that it could have been different and so on. But we are doing the right thing. That is why, again, all the professional people who do these calculations in a proper way, all of them, all the active institutional investors, people like David Martinez, they are tendering because they see the rationale of this thing. So we do think we did the right thing. But if you ask me, the fechas, the dates were very unfortunate because there was a leak, you might remember, and given there is a leak, we had to make it public, and this was all made public just before the elections in Catalonia. So the fechas were unfortunate, in my view. I wish the fechas were a bit different, but we have done the right thing. But we have to look forward, Nicolas, to finalize the discussion. We have to look forward. Whatever happened, happened. So we have to look forward. And as part of this process, we have made commitments, compromisos, a la sociedad, a Cataluña, a los clientes de Sabadell, a los empleados de Sabadell. We have made many commitments. What we are focused on at the moment is not the past. What we are focused on at the moment, I mean, commitments like for clients of Sabadell, 5 years, in the next 5 years, we will maintain, preserve the credit lines of Sabadell and BBVA at the same time for 5 years to give them comfort, to give them guarantee that everything will be fine. We told them that it's going to be the same gestor, same bank service. We made compromisos. Our focus at the moment is the future and to make sure that we deliver these compromisos. That's our focus.
De acuerdo, buen cierre. Pues nada, se nos ha acabado el tiempo, ya vamos un poco mal. Simplemente quiero agradecerte haber respondido a todas y nada, pues que el año que viene, no sé, hablaremos de otras cosas, pero no de la OPA, espero.
Exacto, el año que viene cambiamos el tema. Muchas gracias a todos.
Hasta luego.